Unsyndicated presents Shep and Sean, featuring Matt Shepard and Sean Baligian.
What is going on? So glad you can join us. He, of course, is Matt Shepard. I'm Sean Baligian. Shep, we're going to have to talk about that intro music at some point in time. Okay?
We are still alive, though.
That's you're going to tell me we aren't? Look, we're all here, right? What a special guest that we have. A guy that not only did we call him boss, because, yes, he was our boss, but I have said many times, Ron Robinson did a really cool documentary. If you haven't seen it yet, you should check it out, called Radio Days. I hope I'm getting it right. It was called Radio Days, right? And he asked me about the history of sports radio in Detroit. And Shep, I'm sure you'll agree with me. The one thing that I said is, in this era of revisionist history and everybody trying to make themselves sound bigger and better and everything, I honestly feel this guy does not get the respect that he deserves for bringing sports talk radio and maintaining sports talk radio in Detroit. He is 3G. Gregg Henson kindly joining us. What is up, Greg?
I'm nice of you to say, but I'm certainly not anybody's godfather. That's for sure.
And we're on.
And we're gone. No, I appreciate that. That's nice of you to say. I know a lot of people think I do, but I'm not here to try to get credit for anything. We just had a blast. It was a good time. And to be honest, I had no clue what I was doing. I was flying by the seat of my pants every day when they threw me in that chair.
Well, how did it happen?
Well, I was the third person hired. I think the first person was Pappy, Rich Pimenko, and then Art Regner, because I interviewed with both of them because I was a producer at 94.7 with JJ and the Morning Crew. And then I went and chatted with a woman named Lorna Gladstone, who was the one who started that radio station. And I'm still friends with her today, although she was a nightmare to work for because she was a hard driver. It was her way or the highway. So I interviewed with her and she said, hang tight. I'm going to hire you in May because this was in April. And I'm going to hire you in May and we'll be good to go and you can come over. And it was a huge raise. I think it was $27,000 a year. And I was making like 21. I was like, hell, what am I going to do with $5,000 more a year? And so we went there and Lorna left. And they brought in a guy named Mark Wugazer, who was he was a marketing guy who had no clue what he was doing. He'd never programmed radio. He'd never been in programming before. Fired everyone. I mean, it was tenuous, man. And a new GM came in a few months later named Peter Conley. And he came in and he told me, I noticed people congregating around your desk. You must be the leader in here. And I said, I'm just a producer, And he said, well, I'll give you 6 months. Turn this thing around or we're going to shut it off. That's basically what he told us. So I took that as a challenge. And I said, well, whatever it's going to take, we're going to do whatever it takes to keep the fan on the air. And it was so bad, Sean, just before you weren't there yet. It was so bad that one day our studio went down and we had to put the station on the satellite from the transmitter site, which is down Jefferson, right? And so we were all working and we said, well, let's go get lunch at Dunleavy's till they get it fixed. Jennifer Hammond walked into Dunleavy's in tears and she thought we'd all been fired. She thought it's over. They just fired them all and went on satellite. And we were sitting there and we all had a great laugh about it because Hammer was so innocent. She was like, I thought you were all fired. That's how tenuous it was at the time. It was a really tough startup for that station, but they stuck with it. Shamrock Broadcasting stuck with it, and we ended up turning a profit and sticking around for 20 years, which is now 30 years ago.
It is amazing when you think back. I mean, all the things that you're talking about, and this is what I'm intrigued at, Shep, because I think we all remember where we were when we first heard this, and we'll get into the original lineup and everything, but the lead up to this, Greg, and there were people in town that thought that this was going to be over just like that. And so it's fascinating to hear you say that about Peter Connolly. I had never heard that. There were people that were publicly and very prominent people saying this is
Frank Beckman, Mark Champion.
You got it. Yeah, that's exactly. And you know what I think they completely misunderstood is there were people like me that were driving to school, that were driving to college, that this is the first thing we had ever heard anything like this. And the younger generation was all in from day one. But Greg, to your point, there were a lot of touch and go. When did you feel safe? Was it after that 6 months? Was it a couple years? Is there a point where you literally said to yourself, okay, I think we made it?
There was a number from a sales perspective that we had to hit in order to keep the station going. And that was probably about a year and a half in. Probably about a year after I took over as the program director was when I thought we were going to be fine, because Peter was very transparent. We were friends. He'd say, here's where we're at. Things are looking good. We had a guy named Pete Kowalski, who's now a bigwig over at WWJ, who was out there just humping it on the road, man. And he made it happen. And we were out on the road. We were selling it. We were doing events. We were marketing the radio station. And I think it was about a year and a half in where I was like, this is going to be fine. And soon thereafter, Stoney and Wojo got the #1 slot, men 2554, which was long the goal, was to get that to 2554. We still didn't get, we didn't have the morning show right yet. It was not me and Jamie yet. And it was like, okay, Stoney and Wojo can sustain this thing while we build. And that's what happened. And, for the next 7 years, the thing just took off and the revenue came in and people loved it. I think a lot of problems with the old timers like Champion and Beckman, God rest his soul, they didn't understand what sports radio was. They were of the mindset that you get a bunch of TV guys, you throw them on there, you get some play-by-play guys, you throw them on there, and you analyze sports, which is what the Fan did when it started 10 years before DFN. The Fan was on the air in New York. That whole lineup with Len Berman and Greg Gumbel got blown out because it wasn't entertaining. They're great broadcasters at what they do, but they weren't entertaining broadcasters. And that's when they brought in Mike and the Mad Dog. They put Imus in mornings, and it really took off. It had to be personality based. And that's what a lot of the old timers, and they weren't even old, that they just didn't understand,
So that was the philosophy, right? I mean, because I'll never forget. Oh, there you go, Sean. Talking with Lorna Gladstone downtown Detroit. And one of her questions to me was, what happens if there's nothing going on in sports? What are you going to talk about? And I said, well, first of all, there's always something going on in sports, but you have to be able to diversify. She never thought I could be able to do that. People in general who you hired, you felt like they had to be able to do that, right? Was that the philosophy?
But I hired you, Shep, because I knew you could do it.
Yeah, but I know, but I'm saying that's the philosophy, right? Yeah. For you to build it, you at some point you witnessed that it had to be personality driven. When did you notice that first?
I knew that from the day of my job interview.
Okay.
I went in there because I'd been working mornings, and I went in there with her. She asked me the same question, and I said, "Well, there's other things going on in the world that I can talk about, I can make fun of, I can have a good time with." And I gave her some specific bits that I could do and this or that. And I was going in there as a producer. I wasn't going in as an air talent. I had not gone on the air yet. I was a weekend disc jockey. And I said, but I took my morning show experiences. Like there's always something going on that appeals to men. So I kind of understood the philosophy. I understood. Look, I always try to get the answers to the test before I go in for the interview, right? And I kind of knew what Lorna had done in DC and Minneapolis, and I was like, okay, this is going to be personality based, but under the umbrella of sports. So I kind of paid attention. I talked to some people, and I went in there knowing it was going to be personality based. So I don't know. She asked me a question. What if somebody does something in a game tonight? What are you going to do with it tomorrow? And I said, I'm going to rag on it. I'm going to make fun of it. I'm not going to get serious about it. And she goes, okay, you're hired. You start in a month. I'll call you. That was what it was. Because I was like, I wasn't going to get on and analyze it. And Eli Zarrett worked with us for a while. Mm-hmm. And I love Eli. He's a good friend and he's a great guy. Eli didn't understand that either. He took over the morning show after the first round of people got let go. and struggles because he's like, I've kind of said all I'm going to say, I'm out of words to say, and it's 10 after 6. And I'm like, well, we should get some phone calls. We should go back and revisit some of these things and flesh them out more. What else is going on in the world today besides this? I remember one of the moments that really, I think, pounded the point home was when the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal was breaking.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like, oh, we can't talk about that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You can't talk. It was Super Bowl weekend. I said, what are you talking about, Stoney? What are you talking about? Well, Jay, you can talk about this. The president is being accused of giving a blowjob to a girl in the Oval Office. You have to talk about it. People are going to say, are these guys not living in the real world? I said, have fun with that. Make fun of that. This is a big deal. And then I walked out the door to the Super Bowl because I was going to San Diego that day to go to the Super Bowl. And there was no streaming at the time. And then so I called later and I said, are they talking about this? And somebody said, no. I called Stoney. I said, come on, guys. This is a big deal. Talk about it. And I think that's when Stoney realized it was entertainment. He knew it instinctively, but wasn't doing it because I think he wasn't sure how. And that's kind of when I think, it hit home for everyone. There's other things going on in the world besides sports, and you're allowed to talk about that. Now it's commonplace, but it was not then.
Let me tell you about our friends at Wealth Advantage, if I may. The Hanson brothers right there. Look at those guys. Mike Husak, Jeff Husak. And if you're ready to take charge of your financial future, look no further than the Wealth Advantage Group, located in historic downtown Northland, owned by two brothers, those guys, the Hanson brothers, with over 20 years of industry experience. They understand that your financial goals are as unique as you are. That's why they offer personalized expert guidance to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning. Now, whether you're saving for retirement, getting ready to sell your company, or already in retirement, they can help guide you through every step of your financial journey. They work with clients throughout all stages of life and have clients in over 20 states. The investment world is a complex one. And if you're ready to start taking your finances just a bit more seriously, it might be time to work with the experts. Reach out to all my friends at the Wealth Advantage Group at 248-773-8574 or visit their website at www.thewealthadv.com. Greg, what you just said, I think that applies to me as well. You know it in the back of your head, but you're just like, well, that's out of my comfort zone. I think that's part of it. You have to remember who your listening audience is. Take me back to that original roster. I mean, people should remember it off the top of their head. Of those of us of age, as Gregg Henson kindly joins us here on Shep and Sean. Butch and Larry, the fabulous sports babe, Van Earl with Jen as the update person in the afternoon, Parker and Stoney, and then the Mega Man. And people can say whatever they want about the Mega Man. I thought he was can't miss radio for a good period of time. I openly admit it. He was crazy. It was something totally different. But how did you guys come up with that lineup, Greg?
A lot of people don't know this, but Mark Wilson was originally who Lorna wanted for mornings. But Mark didn't want to give up TV to do it at that point because she really liked Mark. So it was Butch and Larry. Butch came from Boston. He was a TV guy, wanted to do something different. Wasn't the number one guy in Boston. Really wanted to branch out. He was good. And then we brought in Larry, who was Larry was really raw. He was not yet a broadcaster. He'd never done the Tigers, and frankly, the show wasn't great. And we worked really hard with those guys over time. But as it was getting better, then Larry got the call to go to the Tigers. So we kind of blew it up. I think they brought in Keith Gave. Van Earl was Lorna's hire. The problem with Van Earl is he didn't know sports. Van Earl, okay, so go back real quick. The Babe was 10 to noon. Then the Babe was great. When I heard her audio tape, I heard her say, sign me up for any sport with guys on skate or running on knives and carrying sticks. And that was her demo tape. And I'm like, we got to put her on. She'll be great.
But she was syndicated, right? I mean, she was a national show. Yeah. Okay.
From ABC. And she actually was, we were her biggest market. And that's why she gave us so much love. She'd come to town all the time. So then we went to Van Earl. And Van Earl knew some sports, but his life was TV reading highlights. That's just what he did, and that's why he got famous. And we had a producer named Annie, who's now at Fox Sports in LA. He was running her ragged, booking guests every 15 minutes. And that's not what we did. We didn't do guests. You know that, Sean. What did I always say? If they're not breaking news or they can't say something better than you, if they can say something better than you, bring them on. Otherwise, we don't want them.
Yep.
And he was booking her. He would roll in just before the show, sit down, talk to his guests, and be gone. And frankly, that wasn't going to work. And he'd get off at 12:30 because he had to be at Channel 4, by a certain time. So then it was The Odd Couple, Parker and Stoney, and that was a really, really good show with a ton of potential. But Rob wanted to go home to New York, so he left to go to Newsday. And it's funny. I hated Rob Parker as a columnist. I didn't even know him. I'm like, I'm not reading that guy. It's all he's doing is trying to get people mad. All he's doing is inflaming. I grew to love that. But I remember in my job interview, she said, well, what do you think of Rob Parker? And I said, I'd never hire him in a million years. I said, everyone hates him. Everyone hates him. And she said, well, just meet with him. And I said, okay. And I came back and I go, yeah, you're right. I love him. He's great. He's funny. He was very engaging, and he wanted so badly to be good at radio. I knew that we could do something with him. So we got him. And then she said, we got a guy at night. His name's Ike Griffin. He played in the NFL. And I'm like, no, he didn't. And she said, well, he was with the Niners. And I said, no, he wasn't. Because he was in camp with the Niners. She said he went to Michigan State. And I said, that's why I don't know. And so then I heard him on the air one night, and I'm like, holy crap, we got a home run here.
Yeah.
And here's the problem with Ike. And the only problem with Ike, it was all hype and no substance. Ike was like a pro wrestler. People loved him.
Yeah. And
if he would have worked hard to develop that game, and I'm not saying he didn't work hard, but he didn't really have anyone to help him, and I think that's kind of why he flamed out, because you're right. Ike should have been a rock star.
Yep.
Because he was engaging on the air. He had a great laugh, but there was never any real drill down on the basic background you need to do talk radio. I remember the night Art and I were going out to drinks for drinks on a Friday night, and we'd worked all day, been there 8 to 8. And we're driving to Livonia to get a mind bender, because Art liked to get a mind bender at Renee's, which is a drink that'll really mess you up. And so we go there, and we hear the Mega Man. Number one, he says he's doing his show underwater, which is hilarious. I'm doing it underwater. So the standard line always was, hey, Ike, are you underwater or are you in space? And he starts talking about how the government is spraying Detroit with carcinogens. And I'm like, holy shit, he's out there saying the government is spraying Detroit with carcinogens from airplanes. And I turned the car around and I went back and I said, Ike, do you have any proof of this? What are you doing? He goes, oh, no, man, I'm just having fun. I said, don't have that kind of fun. You can't prove that. That's slanderous. What are you doing? But yeah, he was a trip. Total rock star. Love that guy. But like I said, he didn't get fired for performance. He was a money cut. Yeah. Ike got let go in the first purge when they were like, well, we're not making any money. We got to get rid of everyone. And, only few of us survived. That was what Black Tuesday, I think they called it. That's when, the morning show got let go. Van Earl got let go. Mega Man got let go. And it was just those of us left standing.
Let me tell you about our friends at Legacy. You know that thousands of Metro Detroiters have already called Legacy, right? To get help with their home and auto insurance. You can be one of them. Some of our listeners have done it. Why don't you do it as well? Two things. You'd be helping me because they help me. And seriously, I can't thank them enough. But most importantly, you would be helping you, because our friends at Legacy Partners are one of Southeast Michigan's top independent insurance agents, and they provide a full-service, one-stop solution for all of your insurance needs, personal and business, large and small. Legacy has helped our listeners by fixing mistakes other agents have made, asking the right questions to get the right coverages put in place to properly protect you, and yes, help save you money. Chances are, if you haven't checked your policies in the last year, you're probably paying too much and you could be underinsured, enter our friends at Legacy Partners. You have nothing to lose, okay? Get your quote now. Save like some of our listeners already did. Give them a chance to help with your home, your cars, life insurance, Medicare enrollment, or your business insurance needs. Got your pen? Okay, 586-209-4106. That's 586-209-4106, or visit legacypartnersins.com to get started with your new quotes. Gregg Henson kindly joining us here on Shep and Sean. Gregg, Jamie and Gregg took the station to a different level. It just did. I think you needed that powerhouse morning show, and you guys, I can say you guys because I wasn't there yet. You mixed with a couple here, you mixed with a couple there, but when you and Jamie got together, what's the term that's destination radio, memorable radio? Some of the things that you guys did, whether it be you firing a ball at his testicles, which, I mean, that's one of those moments that everybody, are you kidding me? Is this real? Is this really happening? Spousal arousal, things like that. That
was there for that.
Yeah, that's stuff that, like, seriously, everybody remembers where they were, or some of the famous, I'm shaving myself. Who can forget that one?
Right.
That was something, I think that's when the station went next level. Is that a fair statement? The station had established himself, but that helped bring the station next level because Stoney and Woj was here. Now you had that destination appointment listing in another day part.
It's interesting that you say that, and I appreciate that. That's a nice compliment. I never realized the show was that popular. That's one of the reasons I left. I wanted bigger and better, which I think we all do at one point. Yeah. And I never really realized till after I was dumb enough to leave that show that it was making an impact. I mean, the ratings were good, not great. I mean, we had good ratings. We didn't go to bed at night worrying about our jobs, just put it that way. It was fun. For the most part, Jamie and I got along really well. But I think it was hard. Jamie was a sports guy first, a radio guy second. And I'm really a radio guy who loves sports and follows it. And I think a lot of times I made Jamie uncomfortable because I was like, we can't just analyze this all morning. We got to do something entertaining. I said, we're not competing against another sports station. We're competing against Drew and Mike and JJ and the morning crew and anyone else who wants a male listener. So we have to be entertaining or it's just not going to work. And I think over time, Jamie started realizing that. He started laughing more. He wanted to do funny stuff. And by the end, he was fully in with both feet saying, how do we make this fun and entertaining? But we also knew on Mondays you had to talk Lions. The morning after the Red Wings, you better have Red Wing content. If the Tigers are garbage, which they were at the time, we got to spend some time pounding on them because we're pissed. And so I think we found the mix that worked in mornings. And we had a big marketing arm called Stoney and Wojo, who were number one. They had a big audience, and we recycled our show back into that audience. That's when the station grew into a mainstream station. It hovered around mediocre ratings until our show started to click, and then we were able to just recycle it. And that's programming 101, Sean. You know that, Matt. You know that. You got a big audience, do it. And back in the day, we could market that radio station. I mean, we could, and then you saw the influence of the station taking over where we could get people on the air. Kirk Gibson would call in, Red Wings would call in to talk to Art. It was a really, really cool atmosphere for a long time. 4, 5, 6 years. It was just a blast.
Some of the biggest compliments I've ever received are from people who are now in the business, but said, I used to grow up listening to that station. That station was, like Sean said, appointment listening. Mm-hmm. They had to do it. When you leave and you recognize that, where's the pride level that you have knowing that station was, and if it were done properly here today, still would be the number one station in this market?
Well, you take a lot of pride in it. Here's the thing, though. A lot of people have rewritten history on who was responsible for it. And I'm not saying I was part of a team that built that radio station. Right. I think it was my philosophy that took it to the next level because the guy before me wanted to analyze sports. Because Lorna, but I took it from Lorna. I learned from her. I knew what we wanted and what we had to do. But there's a lot of people now who want to revise history and, and call themselves the Godfather and all this stuff. And there's no doubt those people were part of it. They were. But, sometimes I shake my head at people who like say things and make comments in like Rico, that guy on with Valenti. He acts like, Sean, that he was there. He was there when it was over. He was not there. He was there later when you guys had to go try to revive it. Not his fault, but those guys act like they were there. And I think the people who are still in the market act like it was all them. Like I'll tell you, Shep, you and I had a really frank conversation about me and my reputation the other day. And Sean, I've never had this conversation with you, but I'll have it with you now.
Sure.
When the fan was in its infancy and struggling, nobody wanted to be out front. None of them wanted to do what had to be done to get that radio station noticed. So I said to Art was good with it. I said to Art, we got to get in the press. We got to let people know we're here. So one day they came in complaining, the Lions came in complaining about me and Art in the postgame show because we were just ragging on the Lions, which they deserved. And they pulled our credentials. And I said, that's it. I'm going to the papers. I'm telling them they pulled our credentials. And everyone's going, no, you can't do that. You can't air your dirty laundry. I said, why not? Why they pulled our freaking credentials because they didn't like criticism. That turned into us against the world. And it should have been. We were the conduit to the fans. The fans were pissed. We were only reflecting what the fans thought. So it got in the paper. That's a famous story. Art and Gregg's credentials have been yanked. But everyone to a man said, don't do that. And Art said, I think you should do it, Gregor. Do it. You should do it. And I said, I'm going to do it. And every time one of those controversies came up, I'm like, I'm just going to tell the press what's going on because it was great reading. People were like, oh, the fans fighting with the Tigers. I mean, the Lions pulled advertising money over something I said. Little Caesars did because I said Comerica Park was a cheap ballpark. Nobody wanted to be out front. So 30 years later, I'm the dick. You know what I mean? And everyone else is still working in town. And I believe this. I think a lot of them still have careers in that market, and I don't, because as Jack Nicholson said in Few Good Men, I was on that wall. Yeah. And I was hammering away. I was out there trying to get us noticed. I'm not a martyr. I'm just saying there's no reason that, we still shouldn't be doing what we were doing.
Yeah, other people towed the line. You're right. Other people towed the line because it was safe.
Yep.
Period.
Yep. And it worked for them. It didn't work for me.
I say it all the time, Gregg, that silly march that I did, if I had a chance to go back and do it over, I never would have done it. Never in a million years would have done it.
You think it damaged you?
100%. No,
Did it? How so? Tell me about that.
No doubt. Because what was interesting about it is I thought our promotion staff was behind it. I thought Rona, to her credit, was behind it. And I've told her that. I think the rest of the station went like this. I don't think I know they did. I know they did. Everybody went like that because they thought it was going to incite a riot.
But how did it hurt you? How did it hurt you? You later became part of the Lions post-game show. How did that hurt you?
I was already part of the Lions post-game show. I think it hurt me with a lot of fans because a lot of people felt like I was attacking the Lions and saying, don't go to the Lions.
You should have been.
All I was doing, quite frankly, was saying, wake the hell up. I'm one of you. This guy's got to go. And, trying to bring us some pub, at a time where, quite frankly, we desperately needed pub at that point.
It did work. It did work.
And in that regard, it did. But the way that it was, as Gregg was saying, the way that it was portrayed after the fact, and the fact that there were people that just kind of distanced themselves from it. Shep, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. It was one of those things where it was just like, okay, so be it. This is going to work out well for me for a few years, and then people are going to go, oh, he's the March guy, unless Rob Parker tries to take credit for it. Which he's done that a few times. But whatever, God bless him, and do what you need to do. But Gregg, to that point, looking back, do you regret leaving? Because I know you, of course you want bigger and better things, but before you get into that, as God is my witness, when I was still doing the Fox thing, Jamie Wojo and I would sit there on Sunday mornings before the Lions pregame show and wax poetically every week about the era at the Fan. And we didn't know how good we had it. You don't know what you got till it's gone, et cetera, et cetera. I think so many people feel that way. So you regret it?
Well, here's why I regret it. The things going through my head at the time, we had just been sold to Clear Channel. We weren't marketing it anymore. We weren't going down the FM. I begged and begged and begged to put that station at 106.7. It was floundering after they flipped to W4. And the company, to their, it was a smart thought process, but short thinking. They said, well, if we take that off AM, what are we going to do with that big AM signal? Instead of saying we can double our money on the FM.
Right.
So a lot of what was going through my head at the time was, I care more about this damn radio station than they do. I want to go somewhere where I have all the tools, Tigers, Lions, Red Wings. I want to go to the big dog for once. I'm sick and tired of beating my head against the wall. And that's what I felt. And a lot of people don't know this, but at one point, all four of us were going to XYT. Stoney, Wojo, Jamie, and me. They all backed out. They all backed out and stayed. But I was like, that's fine. I got what I wanted out of it. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to program this place. And I do regret leaving because I enjoyed working with Jamie. But going to XYT, I got to work with Art again, who I really, really love the guy. And we had all the teams. But that wasn't all it was cracked up to be. I came to realize that the best part was not having the teams. Because then you can be whatever you want to be. Yeah. Over there was a day I was on the air, or I was in my office. And Jim Stapleton, who used to work for the Tigers, that guy's a piece of work, really dumb guy. And he called my boss and said, why the hell, just before our games, is Gregg Henson on the air trashing us? He said, right now, Gregg Henson's on the air trashing us. And so my boss came in and he was asking me, why are you and I said, hey, Rich. And I turned around, I turned up the radio and said, the Tigers are on our air, not me. I'm not even on today. What the hell's he talking about? The guy was just a real dumbass. And so that's kind of, I went there and I regretted it later. But then, a few years later, everyone got blown out anyway because they didn't give a shit about the radio station. The company.
All right, well, tell us this then. We all know, look, it's very well known in the market. Had DFN gone FM, things would look, the landscape would be different. How different? I don't think anybody could predict, but it would have been a different landscape in Detroit sports talk radio in Detroit. Why didn't they do it? How hard did you push? And what would you do differently if you had it to do over again to try and get your way?
Well, I knew it wasn't going to happen because if anyone was going to do it for me, it would have been Peter Conley because he agreed with me. We multiple meetings. We flew to Kentucky, multiple proposals, year after year after year. This thing's not working on the FM. I think it was Alice at the time.
It was.
And
what?
Yeah.
It's
just it's not working, you guys. And we have the #1 afternoon show. You know what I want? My proposal included hiring Drew and Mike for mornings, moving me and Jamie to middays, and leaving Stoney and Wojo in afternoons and hiring a night guy. And I don't even know if we could have got Drew and Mike, but that was my pie in the sky. If we can get them from Riff, I think their deal was up. I never talked to them about it. That was just in my plan. And I thought, no one will touch this radio station. If we have those 3 shows, no one will ever touch it and you'll make millions and millions. And ultimately, their thing was talk belongs on the AM. And because I don't know if you remember WOW FM.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was such a colossal fail that no one wanted to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
It was way ahead of its time. And because they hired a bunch of disc jockeys who couldn't fill 3 hours,
Exactly.
And I mean, that's a station I called in and I used to tell them I'm calling from Food Town. And they didn't know I was making fun of them. So we did this and we went over and he's like, hey, it's Greg from Food Town. The guy said that. So we were working at CSX and we'd all just call over there. So anyway, they ultimately said, we're just going to leave it where it is. No, you don't have any competition. It's just, you're kicking XYT's ass, and they have all the teams. And I'm like, okay, so how does this play out? And that's when I started listening to the calls because they pursued me for a year. I was supposed to replace Imus, and I turned them down. And so after a year, I said, it's time. It's just time. It's not. I felt like, Sean, like I didn't realize how big DFN was. I thought we were just this little pissant. I was fed up. I wanted to go win, and I didn't realize we were winning. So that was the frustrating thing. When they didn't go FM, I set 2 goals. I want to move this thing out of this goddamn garage, and I wanted to get the Pistons. And then I wanted to turn 1310 Sports as a buffer. I did all those 3 things and then took the job at CBS. So,
Shep, I think you were in the meeting. Greg, this was when you were gone. And Shep, correct me if I'm wrong. When 1270 finally moved to the FM, we had a meeting. And Shep, again, I don't know if you were in the meeting. I was very adamant. Greg, it kind of sounds like the way you were. I was really having an argument with a guy that I really like, Dom Theodore. I said to Dom, I said, Dom, we can put them out. And he was like, listen, the company doesn't have any interest. And I was like, we can put them out. We could legitimately put them out. And I have to give credit to a guy that didn't speak up very often. Wojo actually spoke up in that meeting and said, we could do this. We could put them out. And
no doubt.
I'll never forget what they said. Look at everything they've done. They spent so much money. They have all the teams. They're never going to beat us. And I went like this. I kid you not. I put my hand up. I wrote a circle around right there. And then I wrote a big circle. And I said, we're done. That's it. This is over. Right. We're done. 2 years later, to the surprise of nobody, it happened. But it is, when you bring up revisionist history, and Shep, I know you and I have talked about this revisionist history that they recreated the wheel with radio, and a certain show in particular just changed the way the game is played. That show was getting routinely beaten like a drum, like the whole station was.
Badly, the whole station. We were hammering them. I mean, we'd run promos about how we were kicking their ass. I mean, that was the fun part. I mean, part of the personality of the radio station was F you, we'll do what we want. It's like, when we ran the Swirsky promos, when he was on the air begging for a job in Chicago. The sports director at WJR is begging for a job in Chicago. Chicago's the greatest sports city in America. Oh, really? Then why are you in Detroit? Right. So we ran the promo about it. And, I'll never forget the night the Raptors won the championship. He texted me and said, how do you like me now? And I'm like, you're not in Detroit. What do you? I'm like, he tweeted at me. I said, you're telling me you're worried about me after all these years? That's weird, dude. Swirsky. And so the company had no interest, and we were kicking their ass. And part of the problem was we were so successful, they didn't need to put us on the FM or you guys, because I had gone by then. But it is what it is. But it was frustrating. That's and it's sad to see that it's gone now.
It is
because of that.
Yeah. What was it like trying to balance, even though you had worked in radio with personalities? We all have egos. That's okay. That's a good thing sometimes. What was it like trying to balance that symmetry with everybody in the different day parts and all the different personalities?
Well, I think before you got there, Shep, I think Sean can agree with me on this or not. They weren't bad. Nobody was an asshole. I mean, they got worse when they went to the other place. But when we were there, I felt like that's one of those special places where most people were pulling in the same direction.
I agree.
I mean, but I don't know that they're all acting the same now, to be honest with you. But back then, like Stoney and Wojo were a piece of cake. We'd have dinner once a week to talk about the show. And, even the Mega Man would hear you out, even though he was on Planet Lovetron or whatever. But I don't feel like it was a bad ego trip for any of them. You know what the biggest thing was? There were people who were scared. Stoney was scared to death. Like we ran promos about whenever Mitch was on vacation, we'd run a promo called Reruns in the Afternoon, and Swindell did a whole jingle about it. And all we were doing was trying to point out he's off a lot and we're here live every day. I think that's brilliant strategic counter programming. And it probably also got into Mitch's head, but it freaked Stoney out and he begged me not to run him. And I said, Stoney, that was probably the biggest thing. People were afraid. I said, have him call me, blame it on me. It's my fault. Gregg's an asshole. Blame me. If you're not the PD, Stoney. And he wasn't the only one. Jamie got scared at times. Just getting out there on the edge. Spousal arousal scared Jamie. He loved the hell out of it. But you've heard it sometimes, Shep. It got a little dicey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But I don't think we had to really balance egos because I think none of us were anything. We were all just peons trying to keep this radio station alive. I think maybe toward the end or now they may have some egos going on and people take themselves too seriously, but whatever. It is what it is, right?
I had a former person say to me that when everything had happened in 2009, you saw the true character of a few people. And it was somebody who, and in fairness to him, I don't want to say his name because he told me in confidence, but he said to me, around 2009, 2010, you saw the true character of a lot of people. And he said, basically, you had two stations with a plethora of jobs. And now all of a sudden you had one ship sinking and the rats were fleeing. And you were taking a look at which rats were eating other rats and which rats were trying to find what they wanted to eat. I thought that was such a perfect analogy because to your point, and Shep, you agreed with it. I never, ever thought that people walked in with their egos at the fan. It was almost like, especially at the garage, it was like, look, we're in a garage. Leave your gosh damn ego outside. But even Gregg, when we went to Southfield, to that shithole in Southfield, and when we went eventually to the A&W building in Farmington Hills, it always seemed with that radio station, for whatever reason, people check their egos. When we pulled the plug in 2009, as somebody very prominent in this town said, we saw the character of a lot of people and we saw which rats were going to go cannibalize others.
Yeah. Well, and you always could see the underlying character of some people. And if you wanted to look closely enough, you'd understand it. And I saw it at XYT as well. It's a slimy business in many ways. And I'm not sitting here saying I'm perfect. I don't recall ever having, and to stab anyone to get what I wanted. And I never had a problem leaving the city to go to another town or whatever. So it wasn't like, and I don't want to come off as pious, but there were some people that you just underlying knew we're not gonna, they were out for themselves and they were opportunists and they're still employed.
So what do you think the defining moment of that station is or was, and what's your biggest accomplishment with that station as a station, not necessarily you individually?
All right. Number one, the biggest accomplishment was 1999. The station billed almost $10 million. This is a 50,000 watt AM radio station with 10,000 watts at night. Should have never billed $10 million. Wow. That thing was amazing. And as a program director, talent doesn't care about this, but as a program director, billing is 50% of your job that you care about. You get your ratings and you get your revenue. And I was part of the business, not just part of the on-air staff. And Peter Conley billed $10 million in 1999 with that radio station. And I look back on that now and go, wow, $10 million in 1999 was a lot of money. Yeah. It's a lot of money now, but now
it's a lot of money. That station would love $10 million right now.
Yeah, it would. Absolutely. But I tell you, when the station had made it, and I this was a revelation I had watching that Red Wing documentary. We crushed the Red Wing coverage with the Avalanche.
100%.
We had, if you watch that documentary, everything we did was in there. The Screw 'em U shirts. There's a big video of me and Jamie broadcasting from the parade. They interviewed us in the studios. That really put us on the map. The Red Wings winning the Stanley Cup, and the Aaron Ward stuff that he talks about to this day.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that we knew the Red Wings, they came on the air, they were rock stars in that town, and we were important enough to them to call. We
were in the parade.
Yes,
there were members of that station. We were in the parade. I remember that. I'm going, why am I in this parade? It makes no sense whatsoever.
I know.
It was crazy. Crazy.
That's when I saw that documentary about the Red Wings on ESPN. I paused it and I called my kids in. I said, "Who's that?" And they were like, that's you. Because they had a long, it was like 4 seconds long. And I'm like, right there, it's the old man. And it really didn't hit them, because to them, I'm just some idiot on the radio, right? But it didn't hit them until I was on ESPN. So then I pull out the Barry documentary, and there's me and Jamie talking. And that's when they thought it was something cool. But I think that's when we really knew that we knocked it out of the park, and the people appreciated it. To this day, I was sitting there after the documentary going, damn, we did that. We were all over that. And it's all in the documentary.
Shep, I saw Aaron Ward this past Saturday. True story. I saw Aaron Ward this past Saturday, and Greg, he said to me, it was a perfect storm. It was that station was so young and hip, and you were doing things that nobody else in this market did. And the Red Wings were finally casting that choking label. I mean, people forget, that's another revisionist history thing. They earned that choking label. Make no mistake about it. The first round loss to Toronto. The first round
San Jose.
The Stanley Cup where they fell apart. Then at 62 wins, we're the best ever. Getting smoked by Colorado. He literally said, Greg, I shit you not. He said to me on Saturday, he goes, it was the perfect storm. Everything came together, and it was like, yes, me, the Red Wings, and WDFN. People still talk about whatever he hits, he destroys. I mean, that is still going on. And Greg, if we're being honest, that's 27 years ago now? It's insane when you talk about that.
Oh, I know. I never realized it when you're in the middle of it. You just don't know what's going on. You're just trying to work every day, trying to promote the station, trying to get ratings, chasing girls, whatever it is you're doing in your mid to late 20s. That's how, it was just special. Most people experience that once in their radio life, where you're at a station and it just goes, and that's awesome.
I always think about the culture when I showed up there, and it was like a fraternity to me.
Yeah.
It was a place that I never really felt like it would be this when I started working there. But as the longer I worked there, it's such a cliche to say, every day you had fun, but you feel like you walked in and it was your wedding party everywhere. Right? Guys that were like, oh man, yeah, you were my best man. You were standing up. That's how you felt. You could check your ego, but you could definitely, absolutely feel like you were among friends every time you. What's the lesson you learned there that you still carry with you today in radio?
Don't hire assholes. Honestly, and we didn't have any. I mean, I think over time, some people might have let it get away from them, but by and large, the people there were good people. And I think you find people who have talent, you talk to them, you have to get to know them. My biggest philosophy as a manager was created there, and it was taught to me by Peter Connolly. Get to know your people, find out what their hopes and dreams are, and help them get there, and you'll get the most out of them. I tried to do that every day. I was a bit of a hothead back in the day where I was like, God, just fucking do it. Please don't argue with me on this. Just do it this one time. And I think you learn over time that doesn't work. Maybe not in 2024, it doesn't. Now it's you gotta, but I think you have to get to know your people, and then you got to make sure they're okay with you joking about their biggest insecurities. And I was fine with it. Jamie, for the most part, was fine with it. Wojo was fine with it. Everyone was fine with, like Shep, I brought you on a lot of times, and we poked at you about stuff,
sure.
But it was always meant to be funny. It would be just like you and your buddy at a bar. We were a sports bar on the radio. Yep. And it would be just like you and your buddy at the bar going, oh, you old so-and-so, you dumb cuss, I'll kick your ass or whatever. That kind of crap. The stuff I do with my teenage sons now, where it's like, shut up, numbnuts. That's my kids will give it right back to me now. And I love that about them, nothing. It's not this dad is the man and son does what he's told. It's like, no, I'm not that. Dad, you're crazy. You're nuts. We're not, especially when we're talking sports.
Mm-hmm.
And they're big into it. Like, they're like, my kid argues with me about Michigan all the time. I'm like, I hate the Sharon Moore hire. They should have gone and hired a real coach. He's like, no, Dad, we're going to be fine. I'm like, yeah, heard that before. Like, I don't know, right? I haven't been through this before. Yeah. But I think that by and large is don't hire assholes, get to know your people, treat them well. I got a lot of people raises at that radio station while we were there. And, I think
you're also a pretty straightforward dude. You're just like the people we cover in a locker room or in a clubhouse where they'll tell you straight. People have to be able to take that too. And we're all parents in this conversation. I'm sure you guys are a lot like me. Lay it out there. Feel free to communicate with me. Make sure you know exactly where I stand. You may not always like you, but at least you know where you stand with you. That's got to be part of your philosophy too, moving forward, I would guess.
Well, I think when I first started, I wanted to make everybody happy. And very quickly I realized, everyone's not going to always be happy. So you're not going to get a X amount of raise. You're going to get a Y amount of raise. Or I don't think that's a good idea for you to do. I mean, Rob Parker and I had a couple nose-to-nosers back in the day because we had different philosophies. But I think in the end, someone's got to make the call. Someone's name's on it. Someone's got to, be out there waving the flag. And yeah, I think then I realized over time it's best to just say where you stood, because I didn't like being treated, like a dumb person, so it's like, I always wanted to know when I went home every day where I stood. Yep. You don't want to go home wondering stuff every night. And that's not fair to people. Right. And so I'd go home every night and I'd be like, okay, everyone knows where I stand. Everyone's good. If I had a problem with somebody, I just pull them in and say, look, this is not where we can be, where we're going to be. You got to either do this, or you can't be here. And it wasn't a threat. It was the truth, and I think that's smart. It makes people feel better too, because no one wants that insecurity of, am I getting fired Monday? Is this happening? That's not fun.
Yeah. No. And maybe the three of us could get a job with Rob Parker. Oh, never mind. We can't. Never go. Go
ahead. We can do the million march.
That's a perfect. Yeah, he did all that, right? But listen. Greg, Shep, based on what you said, this industry has changed. I will love radio to the day I die. I joked with somebody. I love radio. I'm not sure radio loves me anymore, and that's okay. I love radio. Okay. With that being said, this industry has changed. I know calls of its demise have been out there forever. It remains, it persists, no matter how struggling. All right, before we get out of here, I have to tell you about our friend Lindsay Broadwell, because when it's time for you to buy a house, to sell a house, oftentimes both, you need to contact the right agent. There she is, Lindsay Broadwell. Your house is probably the biggest investment you'll ever make, and that's why you need a pro. Lindsay grew up on the mean streets of Northville and has expanded her team all over Southeast Michigan. She's an expert in all facets of the business, and when it's time to move, our friend Lindsay and her team will make sure you get the most out of your house and that everything goes smoothly when finding your new home. Buyers, seller, first-time buyer, doesn't matter. Make sure you contact Lindsay at BroadwellHomes.com. She will help you with everything from start to close. Licensed realtor at Real Broker LLC. Start your search today at BroadwellHomes.com. Greg, could another sports station, a legitimate sports station, work in a market like Detroit today?
Does everywhere else. There's no reason it can't. But everyone's adverse to risk. These companies are all floundering, for the most part, like the ones that are in town. They're struggling, and it's a big investment. I begged 105.1 to give me a crack at it. They wouldn't even talk to me. I said, okay, you're making every mistake in the book. And I felt like
they wouldn't talk to you, huh?
Nope.
Wow.
Never. They were like, we're good. We got a PD. And I'm like, yeah, you do. But do you? You know what I mean? It's like, why would you bring
that last? How long did that station last?
2 years.
2 years. I was going to say 18 months. Yeah. Did they hire you there, Sean?
I got hired in the second wave because
Greg, but it was over by then.
Yeah. You and I had the same well, if you remember, the reason they got me point blank is they said, we got the Tigers and Red Wings. because they were told they got the Tigers and Red Wings. And when that happened, then I said, okay, I'm going to jump. And then 2 weeks later, we all know what happened. They, another offer came, and that was that. But at that point in time, I had probably the same conversation that you had with the same gentleman. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even remember his name now. I'm not being disrespectful. I don't even remember his name. And he told me about his lineup, and I said, this is never going to work. And he said, well, what are you talking about? I said, you have Drew and Mike down the hall. And he goes, yeah. I go, Howard Stern conquered every market except Detroit. Why? Right. Why? Detroiters want Detroiters. This Mike and Mike stuff and this putting a syndicated show, it was great for the fan back in the day in its infancy. Let's put Nancy Donnellan in. Let's put Jim Roman. Right. But gosh damn it, 6 to 6. At least you gotta go local. And they wouldn't do it. And that was that.
I take it back. They talked to me, but didn't give me the time of day.
Okay.
And I talked to Drew last week. And we did a podcast last week, Drew and I was telling him, I said, I would have put you back in mornings and left you alone. I said, I would have left you alone in afternoons. And he said, Greg, they wanted to put a sports guy in with me, and they wanted me to talk sports. And I said, fine, but you're talking sports from a fan perspective because you're a fan.
Yep.
Do what you do. Leave him alone. But the bigger problem was they didn't have a morning show, and the midday guy never hosted a show in his life. And then he was weaseling his way into afternoons. Drew said this right on the podcast, and he was weaseling his way into afternoons and failed miserably. That was not the way to go. He got fired, and interesting how that happened. Apparently, they set him up. So
he did.
Did they?
Front row seat.
Yeah. Well, we all knew that was happening.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's been happening for years. So if you go back, though, you leave him alone, you get a real morning show, like, I don't know, me. I would have come back to do that show. And I would have programmed it, would have saved them money, and they would have actually gotten ratings. Right. Then you put a midday show in with someone who can host a show. I don't know, either one of you guys. I don't know if you were available, Shep, or not, but either one of you guys. Art Regner was available. There were plenty of people who can draw audience available. And they went with Lindsey Hunter and Dave Shore. I mean, what are we doing?
That's the name, Sean.
Yeah. That's him. Yeah. And it wasn't going to work. And I knew it. And I was not surprised at all it got blown up. Not at all.
It took me about a month being there when I realized, Greg, oh my gosh, what did I jump into? Like, honestly, it took me about a month. And I mean, that doesn't mean that you don't keep swinging. I kept swinging. But I knew. We all knew. I think whether we want to admit it or not, we all knew. Especially, I think they had wasted that first couple years. They had wasted that first couple years. So that last year was just, it was running out the string. It was, throwing up every Hail Mary, and that's the way that it worked.
And you had a guy programming it who was from LA who thought the NBA was the biggest show in town. Not college football, not the Lions, not the Red Wings. And it was like, are you really going to talk NBA all fucking afternoon? What are you doing? If I'd have been the PD, I'd have walked in and said, get out. We're not talking NBA for 3 hours with Lindsey Hunter. And if Lindsey can't talk about the other teams in this town, he can't be here.
Yeah.
And that, I guess that's what makes me an asshole.
Yeah. Amazing how that worked. Tell everybody what you're doing now, Greg. I know you and Michelle are having a blast, a great market, but for people out there that aren't aware, let people know where they can find you and what you're doing.
I'm in Grand Rapids. I came back a year ago only to work with Michelle. I loved my time with her, and we were really successful at 97.1 before it went sports. And her partner was let go, and she called and said, would you come back? And I said, hell yes, I'll come back to work with you. If it's with you, I'll come back. So I got here, and then soon after I got here, they made changes, and they made me the PD of LAV and Thunder Country and the sports station. So I have 3 stations. I'm doing mornings, and it's a lot of fun. I'm happy working with Michelle. I think this will hopefully, and I'm gonna knock on wood, but hopefully my last stop. Although you never know in this business. You just here today, gone tomorrow. We're like yesterday's trash. You know what I mean? So I'm up here now, and I'm loving it. My kids are in college out here, and it's really been it's been a blessing of a move to come back here. And I loved Richmond. was doing conservative talk, but I got
Yeah.
sick of politics. Oh, that was a beating every day. So, but I'm doing great. Happy 30th to the fan.
It's good that you're back. It's great that you're in Grand Rapids. It is a good market. Love the people there in GR, but
Yeah,
what a fun time reminiscing about DFN. And yeah, I mean, 30 years when this airs May 4th. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to bring some other folks in from way back when, and we'll get some storytelling from them. But had to start with you because you got the stories, and you're the guy piloting that boat for a long, long time. So thanks for all that you've done.
but I'm no godfather, and don't you forget it.
Well, if I do forget it, somebody's going to remind me pretty quickly, I'm sure.
Gregg Henson, Matt Shepard, thank you so much. I'm Sean Baligian. Until next time, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Shep and Sean, featuring Matt Shepard and Sean Baligian. Produced by Todd Losey and Blake Matcherzak. Executive produced by Sean Baligian and Todd Losey. Theme song, incidental music, and related sound effects are from Still Alive by Anti-Ghost. Engineering, mixing, and graphic design support provided by the Unsyndicated Podcast team. Don't forget to like and subscribe on all your favorite channels. While you're there, be sure to rate and review the podcast. Call the Unsyndicated hotline at 248-237-3257.
Don't say it hurts. That just makes it worse. I'm not gonna lie. I am still alive.
Shep and Sean, featuring Matt Shepard and Sean Baligian. Produced by Todd Losey and Blake Matcherzak. Executive produced by Sean Baligian and Todd Losey. Theme song, incidental music, and related sound effects are from Still Alive by Anti-Ghost. Engineering, mixing, and graphic design support provided by the Unsyndicated Podcast team. Don't forget to like and subscribe on all your favorite channels. While you're there, be sure to rate and review the podcast. Call the Unsyndicated hotline at 248-237-3257.
Don't say